Wait, hold on. What's...
We just started.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't know the name of the class.
Recording in progress.
I think we started.
Okay,
you think
great.
we started?
So we're talking about transformation today. I was just trying to say to Matthew, like, I'm a ventriloquist. Like I was trying to say, I don't know the name of the class. It has to do with transformation. I don't know.
I don't think we usually give the name anyway.
Yeah, at the top, you're probably right.
Yeah.
No, you look like you got a little bit of a tan. Did you get some sun?
I don't know.
I
You're
feel
with
like-
me most of the time.
I
so.
know, but I don't have any. I don't have any color. So we're talking about transformation, and I think one of the most things that people don't understand is there's a big difference between information and transformation, because we live in a society that prizes this big, beautiful brain, and we get so many goodies in our life from letting our head guide us through life, right? We get a lot of career success. We get a lot of success for being intelligent and smart and thinking your way out of a problem and all of this stuff. But unfortunately, in this information age that we live in, where everything is at the click of your fingertips, right? Like you can find out anything. I mean, back in my day, we had this thing called the Britannica Encyclopedia. Do you remember the Britannica Encyclopedia?
It was the other way around. It was Encyclopedia Britannica.
You mean I said it backwards?
You said it
I know
backwards.
you're shocked. I do it all the time. He's shocked I said it backwards.
But the Encyclopedia Britannica had everything you wanted to know in it. It was like 40 books, right? Alphabetical, and it just
and they
took
were big. They
like
looked
the
like
first
law
one was like the
books.
letter A and B or something, right?
Yeah, A through whatever, and then sometimes I think A might have even been like A through B, and then B through C, and then C, because there was so much stuff in
Right.
it. So like, let's say in the 6th grade, I was going to do a book report on something like zebras, or I had to do a report on zebras, not a book report, but a report on zebras. Where you had to pick an animal. I would go to our Encyclopedia Britannica.
Yeah.
I said it backwards, and in my brain it's still backwards. And I'd have to go to Z, and I'd have to look up zebras, and that's where I'd get all my data. Or I could go to the library, and because I knew the Dewey Decimal System, yeah, that's a whole other thing. Kids, if you're listening, ask your parents or grandparents about the Dewey Decimal System. The rest of you, if you're Gen Xers like us, then you probably know what that was like when you were a kid. And you know, you didn't go look for a book in the library alphabetically if you're a kid. That's not how it worked. But you'd go and look up books based on what you were looking for, and they had this big Dewey Decimal System. And yeah, so it was hard to get information. But
Yeah.
now it's at the click of your fingertips. So let's make the distinction really clear, because you know, if you were, let's say you wanted to drop, 10 to 15 pounds or 15 to 20 pounds, and you got a book on weight loss or on exercise.
Or an article or a video.
Yeah.
Good.
And you watch that video or you read that article or you even read the whole book cover to cover. Do you think you're going to weigh less at the end?
Well, if you
No.
haven't eaten while you read the whole book, and it took you several hours to read the book,
You might be hungry.
you might be hungry,
But
but
you
you
won't
probably
weigh less.
you probably don't weigh any less.
You probably don't weigh any less. So what we're trying to say is having data, having information is not equivalent to creating a transformation. So every single caterpillar, whether they turn into a moth or a beautiful butterfly, right? Whether they're going to fly around at night or during the day, when you go through a true metamorphosis, when you go through a true transformation, there's no going back, right? There's no way a butterfly can turn back into a caterpillar or a moth can turn back into a caterpillar. And so there's a lot of misconceptions, I think, about what a transformation is. And our specialty, in case you don't know, is about identifying hidden blocks to love by identifying somebody's pattern or negative pattern when it comes to dating, mating, and relating. And it could be just in your love life, or it could be just the way you relate to other people in every part of your life. And that's different person to person.
And we really, when we do this, we like to dive down to what we think of as your core wound. We call this wound your love imprint, right? Your love imprint it's how you'll learn to receive love in your family of origin. And what we mean by that is, as a little baby, you came into the world.
La la la.
And
Pretend I'm holding a baby.
And you didn't have any blocks to love. You
Nope.
gave love freely. You received love freely. You would notice this if you're ever around a newborn baby. they are so open to love.
They're just like, they beam that light of love on anybody who's around, and they will receive love from anybody who's willing to give it. Sometimes when we're out in the world and we see a little teeny baby in a stroller or a mommy holding a baby, and we go, look, no blocks.
That's
we
right.
we point that out. Because
No blocks.
they have this like usually a blissful look on their face, just kind of taking it all in, like 2 million bits of information. Now I got to take a nap, And yes, of course, they cry when they need something and all that, but they will receive love from anybody who's around. They will give that and shine that spotlight of love on anybody who's around.
And then what we learn very quickly that love is conditional.
And this is like the human condition. We're not trying to bag on parents. We know that's the hardest job there is. But like, we're all raised by flawed people who were raised by flawed people who were raised by flawed people who were raised by flawed people. And the flaw is really where their capacity is. Some parents have a lot of capacity and they study how to be a parent and they read a lot of books and maybe they're watching a lot of TikTok videos these days or even Instagram Reels, and they're figuring out what to do when my baby whatever, and they're Googling it. But that Google hasn't been around that long. Googling it always makes me laugh because that's such a funny thing to say. It's like one of the funniest things that's in our common vernacular now, but that didn't exist not too long ago. And so information was harder to come by. And then there's a bunch of people that just think, oh, I'm going to, they have a baby and they didn't have the time to go study and figure it out. So your love imprint is directly affected by your parent or parents or whoever raised you, by their capacity. And the thing is when you're that little kid, you make meanings out of the events of the past. As a matter of fact, you're doing it right now, even as an adult, because this brain of all of ours, each brain is a meaning making machine. So before we go any further, I'm going to introduce us. Hi everybody, I'm Orna Walters.
I'm Matthew Walters, and this is Love Intervention. We're here to intervene in your love life and get you on the path to the long-lasting, soul-satisfying love that you desire. So we, love to hear from all of you who are listening, where you're watching us from, where you're joining us from. If you could just type into the chat and say, hey, this is so and so, and I'm in, wherever, just to say hi, because we love to. We love to connect with everybody. So we're talking about this concept of your love imprint, and I want to get really just clear and succinct about it. So what happens is you have a need or a desire about how you want to be loved. And then there's the capacity of the people who raise you, how they're capable of giving you love. So that disconnect between how I want love and how love is presented to me is a mismatch, usually, right? Most people don't get the kind of love that they really desire. And so when your parent does something that doesn't feel very good, as that little baby, you don't have that ability to say, well, gee, Mom, that actually doesn't make me feel loved. That's not helpful. What would be great is if you give me a hug and told me you love me and everything's going to be okay. Instead...
But hold on a second, because I think to say if your parent does something, well, I don't want to do that, because most parents are doing the best they can. So usually what happens is the kid is upset.
I didn't say they did something bad. I just said they did something that upset you.
Yeah, but it's usually the other way around. The kid is upset. Okay. The kid has upset. Like, I'm upset. Whatever, I'm hungry. Whatever. Somebody made fun of what I was wearing at school, or somebody made fun of my hair at school, and I come home and I'm like, I'm in preschool, and I come home and I'm like, Mommy made fun of my name, because that never happened to me, and so it happens so often. Oh, I swore I'd change my name. I can't believe my name is still Orna. I grew into it. I love my name, but whatever. And so how your parent responds when you're upset, I think, is a better way to say it.
No,
That's what I was trying to get at.
Sure. So how your parent responds when you're upset is usually a mismatch to what you really need in that moment. And instead of saying, well, gee, Mom, or gee, Dad, that's not helpful. What would be helpful is if you did this instead. What we say to ourselves is we say, what is wrong with me that my parent is behaving this way? And we take on this sort of story that we've done something wrong, or there's something wrong with us. And then what we do, because this is what we always do, what human beings do when they want confirmation of something, we start looking for evidence of that story that we're telling ourselves. right? And the thing is, there's so much experiences and input and information in the world, you're going to find evidence to confirm your belief.
Whatever it might be.
Whatever it might be. And when you find enough evidence, it usually doesn't take much, one or two more events, you go, oh, this is true.
This must be true.
Right? This must be true about me. This must be true that I am not worthy of love, or this must be true that I'm going to screw it up, or this must be true that, I'm not, I can't get the love I want, right? These are different versions of love imprints. And so when you make that decision and you take on that belief, it becomes part of a subconscious program, because it goes from being here to like, I wonder if this is true, to finding enough evidence to being somewhere in here.
In the hard drive.
In the hard drive, right?
Or we should say the heart drive.
The hard drive of your, It's not the hard drive though, because you can't change a hard drive, it's software. So I wouldn't say hard drive.
Why I said
it's the
you
wrong
didn't hear
analogy.
me. I changed it.
The heart drive. Yes.
Heart drive. It becomes written on your heart drive.
I think you're confusing things. So I'm going to come back. So this belief becomes a subconscious belief. And what we do as adults is we interpret experiences in our intimate relationships to match those beliefs.
So your love imprint is made up of your limiting beliefs about love,
Mm-hmm.
your mental, emotional patterns, and your behavioral strategies for giving and receiving love. So if you think about it, it's one whole thing, like an egg, that's made up of 3 parts. And the reason why we're talking about this is because we're talking about transformation today. And is a genuine transformation possible for people? Because I think a lot of times when you struggle when it comes to love, you just kind of feel like, well, I didn't get the memo, everyone else did, or I don't know how to do it. I know
Right.
I felt that way. I mean, honestly, for me, I started meditating, and at the end of meditations, I would ask myself, what do I really want? And the answer came, and it was love. I want a great love relationship. And the first time that happened, I was, oh no. I got up really quick and went into my life. I drove to work early. I was like, nope. I don't know how to do that. There's a lot of things I know how to do, but I don't know how to do love. No. I think Tina's trying to get a date with me. She says I look beautiful, and she lives in LA. Tina, it's very sweet of you to say, but I'm taken. I don't know if you noticed. Maybe we can grab a cup of tea.
And we also had Stephen from New Jersey say hi as well.
So hi, everybody.
Hi to you guys. If anybody else wants to jump in and say hi. So before you jump into that,
hold on a second.
I'm
not jumping in. I want to just say we have a lot of opportunity for people to ask questions.
Mm-hmm.
So I can look while you're talking.
You got it.
So every time I pick up the paper, don't jump all over me. And thank you very much.
You can tell we're off the cuff with these things.
So I just want to say, there's 2 people out of this huge group that we have today that's typed into the chat. You are going to have an opportunity to ask us literally anything. It can be about what we covered tonight about transformation. It could be about anything else that you want to ask us. And, we're not the easiest people to get a hold of because we're busy. And so I'm not saying this to say, hey, look, here's your chance. We do host these every other week, but I just want to say, here's your chance today, right now, to ask us anything. So if you have pen and paper or you want to just take notes, feel free to ask us anything you want when we open it up for questions.
Yeah, great.
Now I'm going to look at this while you talk. Is that okay?
Awesome, that's great.
Awesome.
So, we've sort of threw out a lot of ideas and thoughts and information about this idea of your love imprint. And what I want to know is, does that make sense? And I'd love to get some feedback from people to say, yeah, that makes total sense, or I'm still totally confused about what you guys are even talking about. So if you could just type in that, yes, it makes sense, or no, I'm still confused, or can you explain it more clearly? Just let us know if it makes sense what we're talking about, this concept of your love imprint, because it's really important. It's not just important for you today watching us on the Love Intervention, but it's important for you to understand about your own patterns in intimate relationships. You have a belief system that you created in your family of origin, and it comes from the wounding story you have about the way your parents weren't capable of giving you love the way you wanted it. Thank you. Tina doesn't fully understand, so we're going to
kindly explain again. I don't understand. Okay.
Thank you, Tina. So,
can I try?
Well, let me finish what I was saying,
okay.
And then you can totally jump in here.
To look at.
So, you have a wound, and this wound is the disconnect between how you desire to be loved and your parents' ability to love you. And in that disconnect You took on a belief about yourself that said there are limitations to you, right? Because when you're born, you don't have any limitations. That little baby gives loves freely, receives loves freely. However, by the time you're 8, 9, 10 years old, you got all kinds of stories about love. And by the time you're an adult, you have all kinds of experiences that prove your stories to be true.
And we're not saying stories to diminish any emotion that you have going on, but the thing about the way we move through the world is only when it comes to love are we in reaction to the past. We're always in reaction to the past. So if the last person cheated, you want someone faithful. As a matter of fact, years ago, we had one of our first clients was a gentleman who was married, and his wife didn't want to get help, but he knew Matthew from other professional things, situations, and he had reached out and said, I saw you doing this work with your wife, and can I talk with you? And he came on as a client for a bit. And the first thing we wanted to do was, how did he pick this particular woman to be married to? Now, they were having marital problems, and she didn't want to work on the marriage, but he did. And what we discovered was that the girlfriend before the wife cheated on him. And that was the woman he thought he would spend his life with. That was the woman he wanted to propose and get married to. And then he found out she had cheated, and his heart was devastated. And then he went out and, met somebody else and probably dated a bit, and I don't know, I'll remember all the details, even though it was so many years ago. And he eventually met the woman who became his wife. They dated for a while, and you know what? He was on the radar to find somebody faithful.
Not a cheater.
Gotta have somebody faithful. Gotta have somebody faithful. Gotta have somebody faithful. And you know what? He is married, or was married to somebody. They didn't make it. So, was married to somebody who faithful. But when he came to us, he said, "Here's the problem." And this guy is like big personality, life of the party, kind of light the room up kind of guy. And his wife was constantly like, "Could you tone it down? Mm-hmm. Could you be less? Could you not shine your light so bright?" So see, he sacrificed other things he needed from the previous heartbreak to focus on someone faithful. And that became the most important thing. Or if you've been cheated on, you're looking for not a cheater. Somebody faithful, we talked about that. Or another example, somebody who's an addict, somebody who's sober, somebody who doesn't drink, somebody who doesn't, smoke pot, or whatever the thing is, or whatever the last heartbreak, we're in reaction to the past. We don't do this in any other part of our life because it's antithesis to manifestation. Keys to manifestation. Manifesting something, sometimes you have to have a transformation, an inner transformation, in order to manifest the outer experience. And so the reason why we're going deep into this idea of your love imprint is because this wounding story, and I'll tell you my love imprint is I am unlovable. And I'm sure some of you are thinking, oh, that can't be true. How could you possibly think you're unlovable? Because here I am as the love coach. Well, I did think I was unlovable. I mean, even when Matthew proposed to me, and I said yes, and then shortly thereafter, he said, same day, a few hours later maybe, he said, so you know exactly what kind of wedding you want, you've been dreaming about this since you were 4, like, tell me your ideas. And I was like, I was really laughing. I was like, oh, that's funny. I was like, no, I never thought anybody would marry me. I never thought anybody would marry me. I mean, date me, have sex with me? Yeah. Oh yeah, I can find plenty of guys to do that. But for somebody to stand up in front of people that know them and to love, honor, and proclaim to do this in front of people, like, no, that wasn't, I used to date guys that would just be like, hey, it was like a booty call, like, hey, why don't you come over? That was a lot of my dating experiences. I'm starting to blush. Happy to share all of those stories another time if you're interested. But I just want to say that sometimes when I'm triggered, I still get triggered until I am unlovable. And I think when we talk about emotional mastery, which is a completely different subject than transformation, so I'm not going to say a lot about it, but I think sometimes we have an unrealistic expectation of what emotional mastery is. But I'm bringing it up because your triggers belong to you. And the work, really the inner work we're talking about to have the outer transformation is to have the transformation you're looking for is inside of you. Because when you transform what your love imprint is to the point of where it's not the honing beacon, it's not the rudder on your boat, it's not the thing making somebody be highlighted out in the world. So most of you know my experience, I think, of being a survivor of domestic violence. And after that event, when I realized that love and pain were intertwined because there was violence in my childhood home, and there was emotional abuse and there was physical abuse. And I think that's the toughest pattern to break. And so one of the reasons why we talk about identifying and breaking a pattern, but that's a really pronounced traumatic pattern. And the reason why I love working with this guy so much is his pattern doesn't have all that drama and all that stuff in it at all. I mean, Matthew grew up in this like normal Midwestern family. I'm making air quotes if you're just listening around normal, because every family has their dysfunction, and that's kind of what we're talking about. Your family may not have fought a lot. Your parents may have never fought in front of you. As a matter of fact, my first boyfriend from when I was like 14 years old, his parents were like a second set of parents to me, and they never fought. That's why I love spending time at their house. And I remember later when I was in college, they were getting divorced, and I remember him taking me out to dinner and telling me in person that his parents were getting divorced, and I sobbed for weeks, because to me their house, their marriage was idyllic because they never fought. And so we all have this sort of wounding story. It comes from that limited capacity of your parents, but it comes from the story and the meaning you assign to their limitations, because they're not your limitations. And when you can have that inner transformation, everything about your dating process changes.
So,
I'm going to say that again. I think it's so important. When you have the inner transformation around your love imprint, you have that transform, suddenly everything changes about your dating process. Your selection process is what I really want to call that. So dating process is synonymous, it's the same thing as a selection process. That's what dating is supposed to be about.
Okay, that's a lot to digest there. I want to bring it down and just narrow it down to a really simple concept of your love imprint. So Tina can say, I get it. So let's say it this way. Your love imprint is the language of your core childhood wound. It is the subconscious program that is driving your attractions as an adult. So we say it has three pieces. It has your limiting beliefs, your mental emotional patterns, and your behavioral strategies around giving and receiving love. Does that make sense, Tina? All of this information
and everyone else.
And everyone else. Well, Tina's the only one so far who's admitted that she doesn't understand it. So I just want to make sure everybody's getting this concept clearly, because it's really important. It's really important to understand, because it is the key to changing your patterns in love. You understand your love imprint and how it works, and you do the transformative work of healing that, then suddenly your relationships change, right? There is this idea of as within, so without, right? We hear as above, so below, as within, so without. So it is an inner transformation for an outer experiential change. What people keep wanting is they go, well, can you give me better dating strategies? Or how should I deal with this particular person? Or there's this guy I like and he's not doing what I want, and how do I change that? But none of that really matters if you're not dealing with what's going on with that core inner wound, because you're going to stay stuck in these same cyclical patterns over and over and over again. And Tina says, okay, she got it. So I feel like I can relax.
Okay, good. So here are some, I'm not going to give a lot of details around this, but I'm just going to give some love imprint examples. And remember, this is the language of the wound, so it's not true. These statements aren't true. It's the language, the way the subconscious identifies, which doesn't really speak in language. We have a process that we do to do a love imprint diagnosis. But when it happens, there's a resonance, an internal, visceral response. It's not intellectual, like, oh yeah, that's it. It's like, oh, it resonates in your physical being, because emotion is all physical sensation. So it will have a visceral response. And certainly some people cry when we do a love imprint diagnosis, but a lot of people don't. I would say that most people don't cry per se, but tears are just emotion. It's just a cathartic response. We have plenty of clients that say, oh my gosh, I love working with you guys because crying is optional. And we're like, yeah, totally optional. Person dependent. So I don't want to give all these details about these people, but I think this story is really interesting. And we're changing the name just to protect identity, even common names. So let's call her Joni. Joni's love imprint was that she's overlooked by love. I'm overlooked by love. And so all of her experiences through her dating process were all about feeling overlooked. Mm-hmm. And so by the time she became our client, she was in her 40s. And she had all of this backup stored in her brain about all these times she was overlooked by love. Overlooked by love. Another way to say it is like, always a bridesmaid, never a bride kind of thing. All of her friends had been married off, but she was constantly being overlooked. And this was her story from her childhood. But when we got to a certain point in our work together, we went to the beginning of her file in the early pages when we'd done her love imprint diagnosis, and we asked her, hey, Joni, when we first started working together, we identified your love imprint as, I am overlooked by love. Does that still resonate? And she burst out laughing. She's like, yeah. I'm overlooked by love. Is that really what we said? And we're like, yep, that's really what we diagnosed it as. And she's like, there's no resonance. She's like, that's not even true with the current dating experiences I've been having. And we're like, exactly. That's a transformation. That's a caterpillar turning into a butterfly.
Exactly.
And Joni's never going to unhave those experiences that brought her to have that initial response of like, oh my gosh, this is a core wound, to then, few months later, 2-3 months later, a few months later, to say, oh my God, that's hilarious. There's no resonance there. And so what we're talking about today is transformation. And we wanted to sort of set up the difference between information and transformation.
Yeah.
We're going to go ahead and introduce ourselves one more time for those who joined late, but also please type your questions about this or anything else. We're going to start asking them to come into the chat box. And if you're watching us on Facebook today, we do have a team member who's porting questions from Facebook over here where we are on Zoom. So don't worry about it. Just go ahead and ask your questions if you're watching on Facebook Live right now. So everybody, if you don't know, I'm Orna Walters.
And I'm Matthew Walters.
And this is Love Intervention.
We're here to intervene in your love life and get you off the path of heartbreak and frustration and back onto the path of long-lasting, soul-satisfying love. So when you tell that story, and I love that story because it's so great, it makes me think of another client of ours, Bradley, right? And Bradley had a lot of drama in his family. His father was an alcoholic. I think his mother's an alcoholic too. And just, they didn't get along. There was a lot of yelling, a lot of chaos. And when we dove down into his love imprint, we determined it to be love equals chaos. And as we started working with Bradley, we noticed when he would start dating that he would meet a woman, and instead of taking his time to get to know her and everything, he had a couple little signals and he would dive right in. And once he got in, and it was a couple weeks in, 2-3 weeks, even a month in, suddenly it's like chaos everywhere. It's like this person would scream at him, and they'd have these huge fights, and it was just, everything kept devolving into this weird chaotic pattern. And we kept saying to him, okay, Patrick, that excitement, or Bradley.
You're saying the wrong person.
Yes.
Yeah, Bradley.
Thank you. Okay, Bradley, that excitement you're feeling when you first meet that person isn't attraction. It isn't love. What it is, it's your love imprint. It's that love imprint match. And he was like, oh, it's like this light bulb went off inside of him.
And everything changed.
And he suddenly started being able to recognize his desire to want to jump right in and his attraction to somebody, and he started recognizing the signals as well, the red flags that would come up to Bradley to show him that, look, this is not my person. This is not, this is going to be chaos again.
Yeah,
and
not a match.
This is the transformation that we're talking about, that we do with our clients all the time. It is the work we do. Certainly, we can talk about dating, and we can talk about communication, and we can talk about setting boundaries and all these other things.
And online profiles.
And all the stuff that's necessary. But this is the key to the work, is going on a transformative journey.
So let's talk about this transformation. We have this saying, a colloquialism, right? We say, oh, it's just like riding a bike. And why do we say that? Because once you have that physiological experience of what it's like to balance that bicycle all on your own, you can't then unhave it. And last year we were facilitating a group program, and we had a client come in that was somebody that was in the group come in during Q&A, and she was kind of struggling to find the words because she's like, well, like we didn't coach her that particular night. And she said, I just had the most profound experience, but I wasn't the person you were coaching in the group. I was just listening to those, and she'd started struggling. She's like, those meditations, those visualizations, what do you call those things? And I'm really grateful to this person. She has a unique name like me, so I'm not going to give her a shout out. But I've been bugging Matthew for, I don't know, years, like 10 years, that we should name what we do and like give it a name. And so I used to come up with these made up names, these made up things, right? Like I know the name for Zappos, the root of it is the Spanish word for shoes. I totally get that, but it wasn't the Spanish word for shoes. It was an homage to the Spanish word for shoes, right? Because I think it's Zapata or something.
I don't
know.
idea.
But anyway, so it came from that root. So it's like, I kept throwing out all kinds of ideas now and again. Like, let's call the work that we do that's not just cognitive coaching and talking to somebody. These are transformative processes that we created long ago to lead somebody through this evolution, this transformation, this metamorphosis, where they let go of this linchpin wound. Whew. And now their whole dating experience is new. And what was interesting about this particular person saying, her name starts with a P, so I'm just going to call her P for now. And so she says, I don't know what to call those things. And as soon as we got off that call last year, I said to Matthew, I think we got to name it again. And he says, you're right. And I was like, what? He finally agreed. Because she was struggling to call it something. And I think that's, again, up here, right, in the brain. All these years, we haven't really cared what people call it. Generally, we tend to say it's process work or they're proprietary processes because you can't find them anywhere else because we created them. And so our goal always is to have a client sort of reach this tipping point, right? Sort of have this love imprint story and all the emotions attached to it fall away. Like if you've been around our community for a long time, we used to have a program called the Burn Your Baggage Formula, right? Mm-hmm. So it's this sort of idea of like loving like you've never been hurt, but with the wisdom that you've already gained, right? It's not like we're going to take away your wisdom of your experiences, but just take away the hurt, the pain, the guilt, the shame, the fear, the anger, sadness, whatever negative emotions are attached to that. Because we are thinking beings, and we think that our thinking is the key, and if we just understood, right? Like we get all that, why is this happening? Why? And why puts you out of your power?
Yeah,
why is this happening to me?
It's the least empowering question you can ask, right? Because
Yeah.
it puts you in the past. And
Why
not
is
in
this
the
happening?
present.
And it keeps that story fresh. And remember, why is meditation difficult? If you've ever tried to meditate, it's because our mind doesn't like to be in the present moment. And I don't care what kind of meditation you've studied, all meditation at its root is focusing on your breath. Why? Because your breath only happens in the present moment. And your power only exists in this present moment. It doesn't happen in yesterday. It doesn't happen in tomorrow. You are in the power position right now in this moment on August 22nd of 2023. We're glad you're joining us today. And I know we've gone off this deep, deep cliff into this deep ravine of deep stuff because that's what we like to do around here. But we have a lot of fun with our clients. And this transformation doesn't have to cause you to have, sobbing or upset, or it's actually this sort of like, it's more like a flower blooming. It's like we get to watch our clients bloom, and instead of being a different person, they just become more of themselves. What did you use that example of barnacles on a ship the other day?
Yes, exactly. Well, we always like to say crying is optional in the work. You don't have to cry to get the transformation. It is. It's like our experiences are like barnacles building up on a boat. All these negative experiences we have in relationship. And what we do through the Walters method, I don't know if you named it. You talked about us naming it.
I didn't say it yet.
But
I was waiting for you to chime in.
So we decided to call it the Walters method because we created it. And why not just name it after us?
Yeah, so we haven't revealed that yet. So I'm going to type it in the chat just for fun because I want to see how it looks. What do you all think of us calling our method this way? Because it's ours, the Walters method. What do you think of that? The Walters method.
Everybody, if you want to
Let us
chime
know.
in on what you think of the name. So really, the work is about scraping away the emotional energy from these wounds, scraping away the emotional energy from these old stories so that you can become more authentically yourself. Now, I wish there was a way we could intellectually describe to you what the Walters method, what the processes are like, but they're experiential. And, Orna always says it's that old analogy, but it's like riding a bike. Once you've learned how to balance a bike and to pedal and to steer, you never forget that in your body. And the transformational processes are experiential. And you have an internal experience that you cannot deny, right? You can't argue away, you can't intellectualize, because it's in your body. It's not just in your brain. It's in your body, it's in your soul. And once you have that experience, you can't unlearn it. And this new understanding you have of yourself becomes part of yourself.
Well, it's more than understanding. I want to call it something else, because it's not up here. It's not up in your brain. So, we think and we analyze and we understand through this big precognitive, this big prefrontal cortex. That's the thing I was trying to say. Your big brain here, the place where you're thinking and analyzing and judging and all of that stuff. I mean, we always say that judgment is the biggest hidden block to love. Mm-hmm. Judgment, by far, by a long, long stretch. If you have an unrealistic expectation of self and you tend to judge yourself, or as I like to say, as a recovering perfectionist, if you think you're trying to be perfect, or if you're a people pleaser and you're wondering why love hasn't worked out for you, who are our people pleasers? I want to know, because that was me. It's funny, sometimes people show up from my past and Matthew's like, who are you today? Mm-hmm. And I'm like, yeah, that's an old pattern. And I'm blushing again. Thanks for sharing, Tina. You're so cute. Thanks.
It's okay.
Yeah, I'm the people pleaser of the two of us. And what I learned from Matthew, I think is really interesting, is like, it's kind of like, I think I'm more in that feminine side of things on this equation. But at the masculine side, Matthew's stories, if you really dug in and heard all of his stories about relationship, you'd understand that I call it the more masculine side, but women and men both have these energies. We're not talking about gender, we're talking about energetics. And so the feminine is more the people pleaser in general, and the masculine tends to be the preemptive strike. You want to talk about the preemptive strike?
Yes. So one of my core fears is being rejected. And so what I always do is I just reject first. That way I would avoid being rejected. Right?
The preemptive strike.
If I could reject you, then there's no way you could reject me. And so I would always look for a reason to reject so that I wouldn't get rejected. And we all have these patterns and stories. And I'd love to hear if somebody has some insight into their own. Tina does say cool about the Walters method, so we got a little feedback there.
Thanks.
But also, once again, we're going to open this up to questions. So if you have any questions about what we've been talking about, or about anything that's going on in your love life, we'd love to help you. Why don't we remind people who we are and what we're doing here?
Sure. We're talking about transformation. We're talking about love imprints. I have a whole bunch of examples here. If you want more examples, just for us to say the words of them, please, we can do that. I'm Orna Walters.
And I'm Matthew Walters.
And this is
Love Intervention.
We're here to intervene in a good way in your love life, to get you off the path of heartbreak and disappointment and on the path to soul-satisfying, long-lasting love. And I just want to say again, if you're on Facebook and you have some questions for us, we do have a team member over there. Thank you, team member.
And also on YouTube.
Oh, and on YouTube. So if you're there live and you're watching us right now and you want us to answer your question, you have a comment, they'll be ported over here to Zoom, where we are with our community. And we have quite a few people joining us today, but there's only like a couple people that are typing here in the chat box. So we're going to vamp for a little bit and give you maybe they're done silent because we went really deep. I don't know. But the thing about transformation is you can't have the learning, right? You can't unlearn an experiential thing. And so back to this person who was like, what do I call these things? What she was struggling to say, because she needed to call it something, is she couldn't believe how powerful her own transformation was, even though she wasn't the person we were actually working with. And I think sometimes people think that they have to be the one and not just listening to us with someone else. But the cool things about all of our Walters method processes, all of those proprietary processes, work with the subconscious mind. So you can work with a group and everybody gets the release, right? Everybody, if it's part of your stuff, because we're so similar, right? Like a lot of times people think that they have trouble fitting in, right? They have trouble feeling like they're worried they don't want to do a group program. They're like, no. And I can relate to that very much. I did group therapy after my therapist for years was begging me to come into group, and I was hanging on by off the ledge of my life, if you will. And she finally kind of made me come into group, and I did. And I'm so glad I came into group because I had felt so not normal. And I think when you really dig in and you hear and you work in a group setting in this kind of way, that you understand that every family has their dysfunction and every person has their love imprint and everybody has their patterns and strategies, and that it's humbling and inspiring, because what it does is it humbles you in your own thinking that you're special and you're the only one who's stuck this way, and it's inspiring because you get to experience and listen to other people have their breakthroughs, and you're riding along with them too. And so it's kind of like our group programs are very much like all boats rise together, and it's super fun.
So Tara, we finally have a question. Thank you, Tara. Tara says, can you give me one example of how to get a transformation if my love imprint is that my needs cannot get met or I am not important? That's a great question.
It's a great question. And I don't know if that's the exact language of your love imprint, but we'll work with that. And I'll tell you the reason why I'm suspect, because it sounds like it came from your brain. So when it comes from your brain, it's let's look at it this way. Like, we all know there's that big Mississippi River, right? It's one of the greatest rivers in all of North America. And the Mississippi River, the Great Mississippi, didn't become that all on its own. It's fed by other tributaries. And so, when we're doing a love imprint diagnosis, we want to get the thing with the big Mississippi River is your love imprint. But there's all these other little tributaries. And your brain sometimes comes up with these little stories that are the tributaries that feed it. So I have a feeling it's something else. But you're saying how to get a transformation. And what I'm saying is, there isn't an example of how to get a transformation per se. Hold on a second.
Okay.
So I want to set it up. So I'm setting expectation.
You set it up. Thank you.
I know you're chomping at the bit there.
I'm chomping at the bit. I'll let you answer first, though.
But I want to say that this is a really important thing to understand. Like, I'm happy to answer and we can give you an example, but it may not be the example or the thing that you need for the transformation, because we don't know anything else about you. And for us, we always say, I don't know if you noticed, but if you're on our email list, like more than half of our emails are signed off. We're here to be your guides to that long-lasting, soul-satisfying love. And the reason why we say we're the guides is because we don't bestow your love imprint on you. We're just not that smart. But we're the facilitators. We're the guides to transforming it and healing it so that tipping point in behavior happens. Now, that doesn't mean you're never going to get triggered or be upset or revert back to old strategies, because everybody will, especially under duress. So I'm going to let Matthew give an example, but I want to say that might not be it for you, because we're just kind of shooting in the dark.
Yeah, I would say, Tara, the first thing that comes to mind when I was looking at your question was, I wonder if you were to think about these two phrases. One is, I'm not worthy of the love I want. And the other one is, I can't get the love I want. And I know they're slightly different in those two, but they're actually very different in the meaning of them, because one is about worthiness and the other's about availability, right? Like love is kept from you in some way. And when you think about this story, also identify the emotion you have about it. Do you feel hurt? Do you feel, shall we do them all 6?
Sure, why not?
Fear, anger, sadness, hurt, shame, or guilt. Fear, anger, sadness, hurt, shame, or guilt, right? And those
I'm putting them in the chat box. So we work with these, we call them the 6 core negative emotions. And it's not, there's no emotion that's bad, right? I mean, I know in this world, a lot of people have misunderstandings around like the law of attraction. That's not our thing, but, other people, we know talk about it, and they sort of talk about emotion being the rudder on your boat. That is true, but there's a misunderstanding around the law of attraction because there's a lot of people walking around trying to polish a turd and not ever feel bad. And now you're just lying to yourself and not you're doing yourself any good. Because as a human being, you will feel the full range of human emotion. We believe that we come here as spirit into this physical form, and we come back because we are here to feel all of our feelings. And you don't get to cherry pick them. So a lot of times people want to cherry pick, or a lot of people think maybe anger is bad, or guilt is somehow not good, and they're trying to constantly move out and deny their feelings. And I think that sets you up to be in a arm wrestling yourself, because you feel what you feel. Your emotions are your GPS. It's your emotional guidance system. So when we're talking about love, people all know that when they get all those feelings, oh my gosh, they think they're identifying and having this soul connection immediately. But we say, be careful, beware. If we give you any warning from today, you're talking about your love imprint, beware of that sensation of instant intimacy with a stranger. Because you can't have instant intimacy with a stranger. That is a familiar response, not a, oh, this is my soulmate response. We call that a love imprint match. So Tara, I know you've probably been thinking in your head there. I'd love for you to answer Matthew's question. And then when you think about whichever one resonates with you most out of the choices he gave you, which one of these emotions pops up too? And maybe you're just like, jogging down the street and listening to us in your earbuds or something, and you don't have time to sort of sit down and really do this properly. But it's not
she says sadness most.
Yeah, it's not an intellectual piece. It really taps in through the body and the chakra system about where you feel the sensation and where we can really talk with the subconscious. And it's something that we do privately. If you're interested in a love imprint session, you can certainly email our office. It's something that we do now and again. We've been kind of busy. I don't know if y'all know, but we have a book deal with Penguin Random House, the largest publisher on earth. And we've scaled back a lot of things so that we can have time to write the book. But if you all are interested in having a love imprint session, I don't think we're going to have a run of like 175 of them by me sharing them today that we do that. So if you're interested, just send email to support@loveonpurpose.com and we'll figure it out if that's something that you want. But today we're talking about transformation. So the thing about having, you're going to give her, the next steps?
I'd like to. You don't mind? Okay. I think that's a yes. I just got to look. I thought it was a yes. So Tara.
A lady's got to have a little mystery. It keeps it spicy.
So Tara, you have this story. And I'm going to say story because, not to diminish your experiences, but story because our mind likes to create a narrative to create understanding. And the narrative isn't necessarily true with a capital T.
I wouldn't even say not necessarily, it isn't true.
It's the meaning that you've given to your experiences, right? So the story you have is that your needs can't get met and you're not important, and you feel sadness around this. Well, the reason that story is stuck, meaning the reason why you keep re-experiencing it over and over and over again, is because of the sadness that's attached to it. And the transformation is healing that story of sadness, releasing the sadness, and suddenly the story of my needs not getting met or I'm not important doesn't have any energy left to it. We like to give the example of Santa Claus, right? I don't know how many of you out there were raised to believe in Santa Claus.
Anybody?
Right?
I wasn't.
But if you were, at some point, you had that experience where you discovered that Santa Claus was not real, that it was actually your parents or somebody else. I don't know who else it would be.
Whoever raised you.
Whoever raised you, right? It was somebody else buying gifts and putting them under the tree. It wasn't Santa Claus. And I would guess that at some point you were disappointed, upset, hurt, sad, angry about that discovery that Santa Claus wasn't real. However, now as an adult, however many years later, I would guess
you're probably not
You don't
upset
even
about
think
it
about
anymore.
it, right? That you probably, even at Christmas, you don't sit down and go, oh, wow, I remember that time, right? It probably doesn't even pop into your head. It's such an unimportant memory. And the reason it's an unimportant memory is because it doesn't have any emotion still attached to it. So if you can take the emotion out of the story, you can take all its power away. And you can transform
Bingo.
your relationship to this old story of, I can't get my needs met or I'm not important.
So who thinks this is cool, what we're talking about? We only have a few people talking to us. I do want to hear from Tara because, we were answering her question, but I just, we're coming up soon to the top of the hour and we're going to wrap things up here. But I want you to understand that the reason why we share so much when we talk with you on these love interventions is because in order to have a real transformation, you would need to do more than just talk with us. So
Right.
if you want a transformation with us, we wanted to let you know how it works. So the best way to have a transformation and get the most bang for your buck, so to speak, is to join us for Love on Purpose Mentoring. And I put that link in the chat. Our mentoring program is that program I was talking about last year, where the person whose name starts with P, it's a very unique name, so I'm not going to say it out loud, but she was like, I had this, when you were talking with this other person, and she was struggling to find the words because she'd had this immediate, visceral in her body experience that she then can't unhave. And it's hard to put words to an experience. And when you have that experience, you're forever changed. Now, it doesn't mean one experience dismantles the whole thing. What we know is it's like chopping down a big tree, right? It's like you got a big tree and you're not gonna get it in one chop. You got to work at it, boom, boom, and you eventually take enough wax to the tree that it falls over. So in our Love on Purpose mentoring group program, it's all virtual. It's twice a week, and I think sometimes people think, oh my goodness, how am I going to do this twice a week? But you don't have to be live for every class. We have some people already that have told us they can only join on Wednesdays or they can only join on Saturdays. We start Saturday, September the 9th, and all the details are there at Love on Purpose Mentoring. There is best deal is to pay in one payment, but if you click the button to see the order form, you can split it in 2 or 3 payments. The 3 payment option is going to be going away shortly, so if that's something that you need, don't hesitate. Plus, this is going to fill up and sell out. Every single participant gets 2 turns in the love seat, and the love seat is not just us talking with you, but doing the Walters method with you. So if you know what you want to work on, like Tara showed up and said, I believe this is the problem. So we would test that out. We'd see if that's it. And we talk a little bit more and find out a few more things and maybe tweak the language a bit. And then we're going to start chipping away and hacking away like at that big tree. We're going to take a couple whacks at it. And this is audio only for those who don't want to be, having to put on makeup or whatever. The last thing we want when we're working with the Walters method is we don't want you subconscious about what you look like. We don't want you worried about what you look like or how people see you. So we've had public figures join us and tell us to call them a different name. So if you're a public figure and you want some help and you want to bring in your love, a love that you can share your life with, like the greatest love you've ever had, come join us for a Love on Purpose mentoring.
Yeah.
The basic that we want you to understand is when you identify your pattern, don't talk about it because that won't change your pattern. Talking about it won't change it. Journaling about it won't change it. Those things reinforce the pattern. I get really upset when I hear other people saying, oh, journal about it and talk about it because,
Right.
oh my God, you're reinforcing it. It's like grooves on an old vinyl record. That's where those patterns are. Because remember, the brain has synapses. So those old strategies, your love imprint is like, it happens so fast because you've been doing it. None of you are, you're not teenagers. You're grown adults and you've had all of these experiences. And so when your love imprint gets triggered, it's like happening like this, even though it might be a few synapses. Because the faster that happens in your brain, the faster it happens over and over and over again until the synapses are right next to each other. When we're working in the Walters method, we actually create space. Isn't that cool? And you rewire the brain for love. The love you want instead of the love that is familiar. Isn't that cool? I think it's cool.
Yeah, it's like those old patterns. It's like a well-worn path. And you've walked that path so often.
It's like the fire lane up
You know,
when you're hiking.
exactly. You've walked that path so often that it's easy to walk it, and you almost don't have to think about it. And when we do one of our processes with you about releasing these emotions and shifting these stories, it creates a new path. It creates a new mental, emotional, neurological path in your mind for you to have a new way, a new journey about how to get there. And so your job, once we create that shift internally, that shift of perception, that shift of understanding, is your job is to make choices in alignment with that new understanding, that new belief. And that's when you really reclaim your power, and that's when you really change your life. We're here to be, like Orna said, the guides. We're here to be the facilitators to facilitate the change so that you can then step into this new way of being and take charge of your life and take charge of your love life and really start getting results like you've never seen before.
Yeah. You know, years ago we were speaking at an event, and Matthew and I were in the back of the room to answer questions. They were signing people up for our program. We used to call the Science of Creating Love. And this young gal pulls me aside, and she's like almost whispering, like, "Do you think I'm too young?" She was in her 20s. She's like 22. She says, "Do you think I'm too young to do this program? I come from a really messed up family." And I was like, oh my God, I wish I would have had something to do at 22, knowing I came from a messed up family. I was like, absolutely not. Like, you're going to be the envy of all your friends. And she's like, okay. She kind of was like hesitant about it. And I said, think about it, feel about it, make a decision. And she decided to come on board. And she did the Science of Creating Love with us. And it's so cute because we got an email from her about, I think it was about 3 weeks after the course ended. And she says, I wasn't even trying to get a boyfriend. I wasn't even trying. It was so funny. Like, I wasn't even trying to get a boyfriend. But I've met this guy, and it's going really well. I don't even know that we're boyfriend, girlfriend yet, but it's different, and it doesn't feel like anything else I've ever experienced. I think I'm on the right track. And then a few months later, she emails again, and it gives us an update. Okay, now he's my boyfriend. And I can't believe it. I've never had any kind of relationship like this. And by the way, I had my 23rd birthday. And we're like, okay, great. You don't have to rush things. She's like, no, I know. I have time. You guys taught me that. Slow love. We're like, okay, great. And, a while goes by, and she reaches out, and she says, we're thinking of moving in together. What do you guys think? Do you think it's too soon? And we ended up jumping on the call with her and having a conversation with her. And then we had a call with her, and during the call, she said, I wanted to ask my boyfriend some questions before I got on the call with you, because I was wondering if it was different for him. Like, I thought, well, I think this is different. Like, it's different. I feel different, and something's different inside of me. It's just a whole different experience. And she asked him, she said, you've been in other relationships, so what's different about our relationship? And he said, you communicate in such a way. I've never had anybody be so open and just lay it on the line the way you do. I always know what's going on with you, and it just brings me peace of mind. And she smiled, and she told him that her response to him was, I did that on purpose, which was so cute. And they are married. They didn't get married actually for a long time later, like years later, but it was, they were young and they wanted to be sure, and it was just really sweet. But so I don't think there's ever like an age limit on this work, because no matter your age, you deserve to get the love you want. Like, it's never, ever too late to get the love you want. And we all, we don't know how much time we have here. But I think, why partner up? You might think, well, why should I partner up? Well, because life is better when you share it with somebody that is standing by you. Like, there's this old Swedish proverb that says, share joy is double joy. Right? You get to double your joy, and shared sorrow is half sorrow. So you get to double your joy and half your sorrow. And, I know that a lot of you have been hurt before, but that doesn't mean that you're going to be hurt again. It doesn't mean that hurt doesn't get healed in partnership either. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to never lose your shit, because sometimes you're going to get triggered. I still get triggered, and I'm still a recovering perfectionist. And when I make mistakes, I say, well, it sure sucks not being perfect. And I don't judge myself harshly anymore. And I give space for Matthew to be who he is, and he gets to make mistakes, and I get to make mistakes, and we don't judge, and we just want to spread the love from us to all of you. Why don't we make a heart together?
Sure.
Can we make a heart together?
As we're doing it, I just want to share what Tara wrote. She said, "Thank you. I really appreciate it. I like how you two look at each other. It's very sweet. Thank you. Thank you so much." We're here to just show you that it doesn't matter what your past was. It doesn't matter your past experiences. You can create an amazing relationship too. If you're interested, check out Love on Purpose Mentoring. We'd love to have you join us. We're going to be back here in 2 weeks on September 5th for Love Intervention. We want to thank our team for helping us today.
Yeah,
we want to thank
thank
all
you.
of you for showing up, for yourselves, and
have a great couple weeks. We just wish you the best. Bye for now.